This statue of Senwosret III looks different from the serene, untouched god-kings of the past. His features carry the physical weight of his office, with heavy lines etched deep around his eyes and mouth. That look of exhaustion was a response to the First Intermediate Period. This was a century-long collapse, where failed Nile floods turned the landscape to dust and triggered a total breakdown of the central government. To prevent another collapse, the reunified Middle Kingdom changed the role of the pharaoh. He was no longer an aloof magical deity, but a good shepherd, a leader physically responsible for the survival of his people. This new generation of rulers moved away from relying on divine magic. Instead, they sought security through a massive increase in administrative organization. In the Middle Kingdom, the concept of Ma'at moved away from the realm of abstract philosophy. Historically, Ma'at represented the ideal of cosmic truth and universal justice. But the trauma of the previous era transformed Ma'at into a literal accounting practice. Order was no longer just a spiritual goal. It was something that had to be calculated on a ledger. The state restructured the economy into a centralized command system. Scribes were given the power to manage nearly every facet of production to ensure the country's resources were perfectly tracked. For the Middle Kingdom administration, a perfectly balanced ledger was the only defense standing between a stable civilization and total chaos. To protect this economy, the state expanded its borders into the rocky Nile cataracts, a harsh Nubian frontier the Egyptians had to secure. Here, the government built mud brick fortresses that functioned as massive economic hubs. These structures contained specialized granaries designed to hold enough rations to support thousands of people for over a year. Because ancient Egypt did not use minted coins, grain served as the standard measure of value. These fortresses effectively operated as the region's central banks. Scribes managed this wealth through a rigorous taxation process. They would inspect standing crops in the fields and record the expected yield, allowing the state to predict its revenue before the harvest even began. This mathematical tracking turned the empire into a giant, monitored silo. National security depended on the scribes knowing exactly what assets were stored in the vault at any given moment. Papyrus bulla of this tracking at the royal palace. Its rows of hieratic script record every commodity. Scribes matched daily intakes against specific rations. To fix deficits, a due-today entry extracted resources from other departments to balance the books. These sudden extractions were never shared equally. While the royal family's rations remained constant, the burden of these deficits was pushed onto the lower classes and state dependencies. The palace operated as a self-correcting system. Human needs were secondary to maintaining the mathematical equilibrium required by the state. The growth of this command economy produced a new, influential middle class. This group was composed of the scribes and regional governors who managed the state's massive wealth. As these officials gained earthly influence, they sought access to an eternal afterlife. This was a significant shift, as the right to eternity was once the exclusive privilege of the pharaoh. This push-in on a wooden wattle of a granary shows how these officials prepared for death. They placed these models in their tombs to serve as a permanent, spiritual food production system for their souls. Eternity was now a commodity. It could be secured by anyone who understood the administrative tools the state used to manage life on Earth. A regional governor named Hepsefi applied this bureaucratic mindset to his own death. He used his knowledge of accounting to write a series of legal contracts to ensure his soul would be fed forever. Hepsefi's contracts were incredibly precise. He traded exact portions of his land for specific quantities of beer and bread, and even calculated the value of temple days, each defined as exactly 1/360th of a year. These contracts tied future generations of priests to a legal obligation. By codifying the trade in writing, Hepsefi ensured a continuous flow of goods to his mortuary cult long after he was gone. This period marks the birth of the Egyptian administrative state. From the pharaoh securing the southern border to a scribe preparing for the afterlife, survival simply required keeping a perfect ledger.